As above, so below.
Welcome to Connecting with Coincidence. I am your host, Bernard Beitman, MD. I'm a psychiatrist and I study meaningful coincidence, which includes synchronicity and serendipity and several more. Please subscribe to our channel, buttons down there. And you can come to the Coincidence Cafe, which meets every third Saturday of the month at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And the link to register is also below. You can look for it there. All you have to do is register once and we tell you when it's happening again. And my book, Meaningful Coincidences, which is the covers on the door over my right shoulder, is my view of this whole area of meaningful coincidences and how they might be broken down into smaller pieces, which I call mind and object. And you can see my YouTube presentation about the book on this same channel. So my story today, some of you have heard before. It's in that book. It's in my previous book, Connecting with Coincidence. But I'm bringing it up today because we have today an animal communicator, among other things. And we'll get to Karen because Karen has graciously agreed to comment on this story, which is the beginning of how I got here and why I'm talking to you. Is like Snapper got me going with this. When I was 8 or 9, my father quit his job as a manager of a dime store to buy and sell cattle in the farming community surrounding Cleveland, Ohio. He knew I desperately needed a dog. And one day he brought home a 6-week-old puppy, black and with tan and white splotches, who liked to chew on trees. I named him Snapper, and we became best buddies. One day, Snapper disappeared. I'd come home from school. I became frightened he wasn't there, and I asked my mother where he was, and she didn't know. She suggested that I go to the police station near the elementary school. So I rode my bike back along the usual route to school, cut across the playground, crossed the big street, pushed the bike up the stairs, and a long walk to the front desk of the police station. There was this big man in a uniform behind a big desk. And I said, "Have you seen my dog?" And he said, "Sorry, son, we haven't seen your dog." And I started crying, as I could start crying now, because I needed that boy. I needed him very, very much. So I went back down the stairs to my bike, crying, and got on my bike. But because I didn't know what I was doing or was crying, I didn't go back across the big street. I stayed on the same side and started pedaling. And, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 yards down that sidewalk I was pedaling on, I look up, I see a dog coming toward me. And he was walking the way Snapper walks, which is like he's got his his legs aren't right behind each other, kind of like a sideways thing. And that was him. He was there. That was Snapper coming at me. So I stopped and he jumped up on my leg. And I was so glad to see him. But what he said to me without talking, it was something about it that he communicated to me. "Where have you been?" Okay, I'm here now, Snap. So let's go home. So we went home. And I'm going to be able to ask Karen, as I mentioned, about that story, but let's introduce Karen first. Karen is a safari host. Yep. An animal connection specialist. An animal connection specialist. You don't hear that too often, who is also a minister. And of course, she has to be an animal communicator. She carefully curates transformational safari adventures for people who are ready to find connection and meaning in their life through safaris and wildlife all over the world. And ladies and gentlemen, you can do that right in your own neighborhood if you got some trees and some deer or some whatever you got out there running around. You can connect with them too. Birds are big on connecting with human beings, so it's out there. But yeah, it's easier to do that when you've got a guide, and Karen's the guide, and especially if you go someplace you haven't been. She's also the host of Connectedness podcast, where she discusses the importance of what coincidences and synchronicities in life that bring us what everyday miracles and magic. Where she got that, as well as the principles that engage mind, body, and soul to help all listeners begin their own journey back to their heart's dreams. So she's right up my line, Karen, and so very glad to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and talk with you about this. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, Reverend.
Karen is fine.
Well, I'm gonna say some people call you Reverend, but I had to try that at least once. So would you please tell me and our listeners and viewers just how do you view what happened between Snapper and me?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you had talked about how close you were with Snapper. You needed him. He was probably your best friend. I don't want to make presumptions, but
Don't. It's not an assumption.
okay. So we create bonds with people, with animals. We have these very tight bonds, and this is not part of the story, but I believe they go beyond the earthly presence that we have. But so we have this bond, and Snapper wanders off, perhaps turns the wrong way, doesn't know where he is. But between you two, there's this bond. And sometimes when I have a client with a lost animal, I ask them to imagine a rubber band between you two. Now, the rubber band, from your heart to their heart, the rubber band might go around buildings, it might go through the forest, it might go all these different places, but eventually it's pulling you back to each other. And so you might be turning, down streets that you wouldn't expect to turn down, or going a different way. But because this invisible rubber band bond, or this bond between you, is pulling you towards each other, that's how you're going to find each other. And what's really interesting is you were young, and perhaps you were young enough that you didn't question why you were going that way. Like, as an adult, we let our logical mind take over and say, well, why am I going this way? That's not going to help me. So I'm just going to do what I always do and go the same way back home. But you just, without knowing it, paid attention to whatever the pull was, and there you found Snapper. So I think it's really important that it's an important lesson for everyone, that if we let ourselves go where we feel like, whatever's pulling us in. So yeah, I believe we have these bonds with, with animals, with people, and eventually they're going to pull ourselves, back together, unless we take action to separate the bond. But bonds of love, they don't ever detach, so to speak, even in death. So I think that's, I don't know if I can explain it through the scientific way.
Well, I think that's a good metaphor, and I've used that metaphor with stranger ones, where people don't have a bond, like two people who work with each other or kind of know each other, and they keep running into each other.
Uh-huh.
And there isn't a bond of love that makes that happen, but there's still the rubber band analogy seemed to apply. And the persons I've talked to about that have told me about it, have say, I don't know why I can't, I keep running into this guy. There's really nothing there. I mean, for us, but I keep seeing him in different places that I wouldn't expect to see him. So it wasn't a bond of love, but it was a rubber band. What do you make out of stories like that?
Two things. I think we might not know why, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have an impact on our life down the road somehow. So we might not know what it is ever, immediately or ever, because we don't know what the opposite is, right? So someone else could have been there. We might have seen someone else, and there would have been a different outcome. But the other thing is, maybe it wasn't for us. Maybe we're helping them with some kind of life lesson, unless we've talked to the other party as well and have said, nope, there was absolutely no meaning to that. Maybe it's not always just about us. Maybe there's something that others are getting from the interaction.
Now, that's such an important point, Karen. It really is that so many people get caught up in kind of a narcissistic whirl, that it's all about me. And that's prevalent, especially when you get a big thing happening that's involving you. But there's often someone else. And what you want to know is what you're saying is, what does this mean for the other person?
Yeah.
And sometimes you may never know
Yeah.
unless you
That's
ask.
yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you want a long story right now, but I had a series of synchronistic events leading up to seeing this guy who at the time was the love of my life. And yet the coincidence of running into him where I ran into him seemed to be insignificant, but perhaps on the other side, because he was going through something in his life at that time. Maybe his seeing me had more meaning in it than it had for me at the time.
Where's the long story?
You want the long story? So, okay, I'll tell it. At the time, I was working a part-time job, and I volunteered driving people to medical appointments that needed help. It was called the Chicken Soup Brigade. I was driving HIV patients to their doctor's appointments. I happened to be off for the day. I wasn't supposed to be off work, but I was. So I called up the volunteer coordinator and I said, do you need a ride? Do you need someone to drive? And she said, yeah, go to this place and they need to go to this medical office building. So I show up at the patient's or the client's house and he says, no, someone else is coming on their way. And he says, but you know what? Since you're here, I'll take your ride. So, so there's one thing. He wasn't expecting me. Someone else was already in line to pick him up. So we go to this medical office and they say, oh, sorry, this is the wrong branch. You need to go to the one across town. So we head to the one across town and I drop the guy off. And then while I'm waiting, I just usually like sit in my car or I go walking or something like that. So I was in a parking lot and the security guy came. I didn't pay for parking, so I had to move my car, went to another parking lot and was sitting there reading for a while. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to stand up. I was in the middle of the city, middle of Seattle, couldn't see much around me, but I decided to get out of my car and stand up. And right in front of my car walks this guy that I was kind of seeing at the time. And the chances of my being in that exact spot at that exact time were really pretty slim, considering, I was supposed to work initially. We were supposed to be at a different medical office building. I just happened to be in that particular parking lot at that time. And I've kind of thought about this throughout my life. That was 20 years ago. And, why did that happen? Why did all that happen? Because we talked, it was great. It was beautiful to see him. But there didn't seem to be any, lasting significance to it other than I got to see him and perhaps got to know he wasn't mad at me. And that's not why he wasn't communicating with me. Maybe that was it. Or maybe he just needed a little boost in his life at the time. I don't know. I don't know.
You don't know, but one of the reasons for it is so you could tell the story. That's an important part of all this, that these minor coincidences that seem to have little impact
Mm, mm,
are also important to pay attention to. Uh, and here you're able to say almost the same kind of rubber band thing that we
yeah,
were talking about with Snapper, at least on your side of it, but maybe even for him, but you don't know what it meant for him, but it meant something, probably. We don't know for sure.
right.
Uh, it, and that you stood up, you, you got, you got out of the car right when he was walking
Yeah,
by.
yeah,
And that's talking about our abilities that we don't pay attention to, that some of us are starting to pay more attention to, that we have abilities to read what's going on around us that don't go through our five senses, so that you could
mhm,
experience his coming in your direction, and he could see where you were with, or experience where you were without being able to say how. And the terms
yeah,
I use are internal human GPS, that
um,
that we have an internal capacity to get where we need to be without knowing how we got there, at least having the map. But there is a map. There
right.
is, there is a ability to experience the other person in three dimensions in ways that we are not told or even think that we have. But that particular example, and also I think of Snapper and me that way too, that
Yeah,
that he and I could sense where we were and even know something about the future of where we might have been, because the timing, as with your love of your life in that time 20 years ago, could you can sense the timing of having
mm,
to, and it's like you're being told,
yeah,
without knowing that you're being told, but you pick it up, like it's like radar, or what I call a human GPS, because it's more than radar. So that's my beginning model for how this works, and I think it is scientifically, experimentally, something we can try out. And I have, without going through the stories of trying to show up someplace with two different people when they came out of their houses, and without having called them, so that
oh,
I could do that with with an intention. So we have the capacity to rely on that ability of human GPS to get to where we need to be
yeah.
at the right time.
What about, um sometimes I wonder if it's like an echolocation, or like, the game Marco Polo, where subconsciously, we don't even know we're doing it. Let's use you and Snapper, for example. You're sending out into the world. Where are you, Snapper? And somewhere Snapper is going, I'm here, right? And the echolocation is like, you start getting closer to each other, perhaps. Or with the people at the house, it's like, my intention is that, I'm going to see you. And actually, this happens a lot, I think, when you run into someone at the store. It's like, I was just talking about you, or I was just thinking about you. How it seems random, but is it random? Maybe
Uh,
not.
uh, it's random according to statisticians, uh, but seems like there's something else going on. And yes, that's what we're talking about. You're very much tuned to the invisible. Um, and why don't you tell us one of your other stories that
Sure.
may alert us to the invisible?
Um, Sure. Yeah. Okay. Uh, Here's one. And I think this is the one I wrote to you. I was moving, like changing homes, and I needed some more moving boxes. It was Sunday night. It was raining out. I live out in the suburbs, and nothing was open, like no Home Depot or no well, I didn't want to go buy boxes anyway. I was broke. U-Haul wouldn't have been open to go get some free boxes. So I needed some more moving boxes. There were movers coming at 8 a.m. in the morning, and I didn't know what to do. I was hungry, so I decided to run down to Taco Bell and get a burrito. And I just, put my intention out there that I need some moving boxes tonight, right now. So I'm driving down the road. It's a 4-lane road, and I'm in the left lane because I have to turn left at the, just at the end of the street. And as I'm driving past this driveway that I've driven past a million times but never really paid attention to, I hear this turn here. I'm like, what? I kind of look up the driveway, but I don't, it looks like a building. But I keep driving to Taco Bell mainly because I'm in the wrong lane to turn there. And also confused by these words that I heard turn here very clearly. So I go get my burrito and I turn around and I'm coming back and I'm like, okay, well, let's see if it's not too late to turn there. And I turn into the driveway, and it turns out it's a parking lot of an apartment building. And 100 feet in front of me as I turn in is the dumpster area, and it's covered. And there are fresh folded, people flattened their moving boxes right there laying next to the dumpster, undercover, just waiting for me. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I mean, and this is when I was just starting to explore all this kind of connection, this invisible connection stuff. So I was convinced at that time that, yeah, there is something here, because I would have never, ever turned into that parking lot without some kind of a nudge to turn in there and finding the perfect moving boxes. So it was a very happy coincidence.
How do you explain it?
How do I explain it? Well, I think that in this invisible area, we have allies, and they might be my greater self. So people use a lot of terms, angels and spirit guides and our greater self and God. And in my mind, it's a collaboration of all our soul friends. So I don't necessarily believe we have one soul mate. I think we have many soul friends, and some are here on earth and some are not. And I think they're the ones like telling me, it's like, okay, turn here. We're trying to help you out. Listen, turn here. So that's my little explanation of that.
And I'm very interested in personal responsibility and personal capacity. And much like what we're talking about earlier about being able to locate people or snapper in space, that human GPS thing, that have the ability to scan our environment to see what's out there that is needed for us, and that we can send that need out, which you did, and out into what I call it the psychosphere, our mental atmosphere, that there's all this stuff going on around here. It's kind of like a mental internet, some people call it. It's emotional, really, and as well as mental. And you can put energy information out into it, and somehow, like tuning a radio, it picks up the pattern that you have put out, and then connects to that pattern. It could be snapper, it could be the love of your life, it could be something that is needed for you that's reasonable for you to ask for. I mean, it's very important to be ethical about these things. And people forget that. I want to be king of the world or something, which could happen. I mean, things do unfortunately happen where you get more than you really need and it gets misused. But you can put it out there and it resonates. And as you went by that parking lot, you got a little ring that said turn here. And I think that had to do with something about your higher self. I think your higher self is actually higher. It's in the psychosphere and can scan for you for elements that are out there that you're looking for. And then can alert you through what seems like, oh, she's crazy. She's hearing voices. If you look at a Psychology Today post of mine, it's about hearing voices and how helpful they can be.
Mm.
And where they come from is a lot of fun to wonder about, but you have more to do with it than you think. Maybe it's your higher self communicating with you, and maybe there are other angels around conferring with your higher self to be able to find it. But the important thing is what you said. I need some boxes. I can't pay for them. I need them tonight. And then you're in a parking lot where what you were looking for is nicely wrapped up for you to take home.
Yeah, exactly. I love that idea that so is it kind of like both a periscope, our higher self, both a periscope looking around, but also our scout in a way, like finding what we need. And I guess we just don't always hear it or ask for something, maybe. I wonder if it's always sending us the exactly what we need to know, but we just don't want to listen to it, or it's not urgent, maybe.
Well, thanks for the Periscope idea. Um, uh, and also the kind of like looking around out there like a scout. I think those are wonderful analogies. And the Periscope I've used, the scout I haven't. It's we have a higher self. So I'm gonna ask you to elaborate on what you mean by higher self.
I think it's the part of me, of us, that is not bound in the earthly body. So the part of us that lives forever, I do believe that we're infinite souls, infinite consciousness. And um I mean, I think it's where most of our memories, most of our um like ideas and motivation and urges to do particular things, I think that's where it comes from. So it's part of this, I mean, the psychosphere, and part of this infinite um life, infinite what did you say mental internet? Is that what you called it? That exists. And um I think it's interesting we say higher self, because I think that comes from the idea of heaven and hell. And even the periscope, it's like, is it really going up and looking around? I mean, I can get a visual of looking all over the earth and seeing what I need way over here on this part of the earth. But I think it's kind of funny that it probably isn't actually higher. It's just a different, what do they call it? A different plane, perhaps. Yeah, interesting stuff to talk about.
I'm just curious about how you think about, and you just told us. And there's another there's another funny variable in your parking lot story. I have I have now heard 4 stories of weird things happening in parking lots.
Oh,
Actually, now 5, because you just told me 2 of them.
2. Yeah.
You, you were you were in a parking lot and your love of your life walks by as you stand up. You're in a parking lot and there's the boxes that you're looking for.
You're right. Yeah.
And a guy is reading a book and walks out in his parking lot and has a mystical experience. No drugs. He's not dead. It's no near-death experience, but it's like the feeling of oneness that he has. Another
Mm.
guy finds a synchronicity thing between a movie he just went to and a thing he found on the ground. It's in the parking lot, right near his car. I just will ask you to think for a minute about why parking lots. You're a double parking lot one in this story.
Maybe I don't know if I have the answer. Why parking lots? Except I know in my situation, I was not in my normal routine for either one. So maybe I was open up to new ideas. And maybe parking lots are generally big and they just have room for a lot of stuff to happen. I don't know.
And they're constantly moving. People, there's
Yeah.
always things going on, and people coming
Yeah.
in and out of parking lots. So there's nothing stable except the lot. But what's going on inside of it is a continuous
So true.
potential. And one of the ways that coincidences happen is a connection between your mind and what's out there. And you have to have thought and you have to have activity, and sometimes they match, but that's only a beginning part of it. There's something that's getting to be magical about parking lots from my perspective that I don't have. So let's go on to maybe what else you might like to talk about. I mean, you're a reverend, among other things. You're a safari leader. You've got a podcast where you focus on the invisible that coincidences tell us about, and that's the most important thing for me. Is that the Coincidence Project has as its vision illuminating the invisible currents that connect and unite us.
Mhm. Yeah. When I was thinking I wanted to start a podcast, I had been an animal communicator, and I knew that there was something about animals, but I didn't want to just talk about animals, but there was something about the connection with animals I wanted to talk about. But then, you know, I kept, thinking about it and writing down different things. And I actually took the Clifton Strengths Finders test. And my number one strength was connectedness. And when I saw that, it all fell into place. It's like, duh, because I've like named almost all my classes or all my ministries, all these things I do almost always have the word connection in them. And so I've realized I'm really a person about connection, and connection with, the infinite, the psychosphere, the invisible. Definitely, yes, the connection between people and animals here on the earth, but more on the, so I call it spiritual level, which I think is the same thing as what many other people are saying. What does spiritual really mean? I don't know. But to me, it's all about the psychosphere too. So when I saw the name and my strength, connectedness, it's like, that's my podcast, that's what I'm going to talk about. And I think it's important for me to help explore. So I am an avid follower, or I like to take classes and listen to speakers that are from the I'm going to forget the name of it, the IONS, which is, can't remember, Institute of Noetic Sciences. And that's actually how I found someone that would to be a guest on my podcast who told me about you. And And I'm also a Hallmark movie watcher, and I watched a movie that was about God winks, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly, the true stories that I need. These are the people I need to talk to. So I talked to Squire Rushnell on my podcast as well, because I think if I can help what I call everyday people that don't have any kind of inclination towards the supernatural or the paranormal or the spiritual aspect of life, if they just think it's all just a mundane life, if they can hear stories of others about coincidences that might help them think something new, that might open up a new idea that maybe there is something here, and maybe there's more than what I perceive at this particular time. If I can just help spark that exploration for someone else, that's ultimately what I want to do. So, yeah. So the Connectedness podcast was born, and I love talking to people about everything around that whole idea.
What do you mean by connectedness?
I mean that we are not separate, that my actions have an effect on everything. My actions, my thoughts, can have an effect on anyone, anywhere, that we're not alone. There is always some kind of a connection, and I'm speaking energetic connection. And that connection with others, so using the rubber band analogy or some of the other analogies that we've used, that connection with trees, with the mountain, with the dog, the horse, can help us, if we allow it and if we explore it, we can help find meaning and ultimately happiness. So hopefully some degree of a higher level of happy living as opposed to struggle.
You're doing what I'm doing,
I think that's a good thing. I think we're trying to spread the word.
Yeah, definitely. It's synchronicity and meaningful coincidences and serendipity. I add that make us curious about how things operate.
Yeah.
And that's sparking that curiosity is what you do. Curiosity and wonder, those are tied together. And that's what you're encouraging people to do through storytelling. And that's what I'm doing. I mean, what do you make out of your connectedness? And the name of this podcast is called Connecting with Coincidence.
Yeah, I know. It's like, well, what a coincidence that is. But what I love about this is you're coming at it from your background, which is, more educated and scientifically based, I guess. And I'm coming at it from, I'm just no one. I'm just a normal, I don't have the science backing me up, or I don't have the education backing me up necessarily. So I love that we can come from different perspectives. And then even like some of the neuroscientists, getting their perspective on the same thing. And so that we can touch more people that way, the people that are absolutely, there's no backing to it. Well, do you call yourself a psychotherapist? I'm sorry. I'm not sure what you.
I'm a psychotherapist, psychiatrist. Yeah.
Yeah. So coming from that background, you have more, I guess, clout for some people than I might or someone else might have. So I think we can touch different people that way.
And who are the people I can't touch that you can touch?
People that don't like science or don't like that yeah, I might need to think about that a little more, but maybe the more like people that really, I don't know.
Well, I don't know either, and that's I think you're right. I think you're a more regular person uh, than I am. Uh, I'm I'm I don't know. It's strange to be a psychiatrist and talking about this stuff. It doesn't happen that often, and it takes a kind of weirdness of personality of. And the way that I got to this is a long story that I'm just finishing a book about that called The Adventures of Dr. Coincidence. Uh,
Oh,
so,
fun.
yeah, I hope you like it. It's like it starts with Snapper. That's what it starts with, and it's how I got into this. But I think also that I am what you call a male uh, may make a difference.
Maybe.
it there's still that going on. I mean,
Yeah.
it's or that
Yeah.
yeah, maybe because I'm a male, they can believe me, and but there's more women
Right.
who are into this than men, from what I
Right.
can tell.
Yeah.
And we don't have to talk about the reasons, but it seems to be that. Um, but anyway, we're we're doing the same something very similar, which is trying to awaken people. Uh, uh, get them to be woke about meaningful coincidences because they can be helpful in life. They can make you happier, make things go well for you. But
Yeah.
let's now that we've gotten to this the feel good part of meaningful coincidences. Uh, in my book, I try to describe the coincidences that aren't necessarily so wonderful.
Mm,
And I wonder if what you would what how you would comment on that question.
yeah. I think there's still meaning in them, potential meaning, even if they're not wonderful, even if the and I'm trying to go through my head to see if I know of one, a personal experience that wasn't so wonderful, and I'm sure I have them. I just haven't focused on them.
I can tell you one, just a simple one,
Sure,
just to give you an idea. Um,
sure.
one of my favorite things is romantic coincidences, and sometimes you can get a lot of stuff happening, even like that guy walking by your car in the parking lot, the love of your life. And it could mean to you that maybe there's something there for you.
Mhm.
And there's Stanislav Grof, a pretty famous psychiatrist, had a whole bunch of synchronicities happen. And with this woman, they got married and rainbows around the wedding and all kinds of other stuff beforehand. And then he woke up the next day and said, uh-oh,
Oh, no.
and they got divorced. I mean, that you can get caught up in the wonder of the coincidences, and that wonder and breeds a hopefulness that what you're looking for will actually happen, and sometimes it doesn't happen.
True. But I think there's always in any event, there's room for some kind of uh, soul evolution or spiritual evolvement or moment of potential growth. So, the psychiatrist that everything was, rainbows and unicorns leading up to the wedding, that doesn't mean there wasn't um some kind of lesson to be learned in it that could lead to a different level of growth, personal growth for him. And life's just not always nice. Things aren't always good. So I think we have to experience some of these icky bad things too to know and appreciate what we want to work towards.
Well, what I'm emphasizing is that coincidences are not apparently all good.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to suggest, and that's what I think you kind of know. And you're adding something that's essential, but a lot of people don't get, is that even when it turns out negatively, and that include other things that aren't synchronicities that don't seem right or good, is that they are potential life lessons.
Yeah.
Resilience, learning from the down is so essential. But you say that so easily for you, but it's not easy for a lot of people, and that's why I add it in our discussion.
You're right. It's not easy. It is easy to talk about, and it's easy for a person to say, "Oh, you just have to, look for the silver lining in this." But it's not easy when you're going through it. That's absolutely for sure. Yeah, life sucks sometimes.
But
I've had
why don't you describe how you can suggest to people to go from that awful to the positive?
Yeah, one of the ways that I like to look at it is one, I mean, absolutely feel and honor and recognize what's bad, what's icky, because our body, we are in these human bodies and they are meant to feel these different things. So feel it. And then at some point though, begin to be open to a new possibility. So this has happened. This is a sad coincidence, or it's an angry coincidence. But start to wonder perhaps, is there a potential for something better? And is there anywhere, I can find some kind of peace and then move up? And there's actually an exercise that I like to promote. And it's not to ignore the bad stuff, but it's to give you a quick lift that might help raise you to a new idea of possibility. And that's to simply laugh, find something joyous, watch a funny movie or a funny clip just for 17 seconds. So just to raise our mood for just 17 seconds can help us remember or get back to a state of what it's like to be normal again, to move forward in life in what we call a normal way, that we're not completely whatever it is, sad or upset or mad, or if we're enraged, whatever it is, if we can find something to laugh at, it's a start. And that doesn't mean we're not going to go back into it 5 minutes later, but trying to just raise us up for just a little bit gives us the potential to move out of that and look for, you know, whether it's looking for more positive coincidences, or just what's my next step? What can I do to move me out of here for now?
The laugh is always good. Uh, the looking for the silver lining, um, looking for how this is a lesson for you, something to learn from. That's so essential in all of these things. But it's to believe, Karen, that there is a lesson here.
Ah,
It's to believe there is a
right.
lesson here. And yeah, you can laugh, but you have to believe, as in the middle of your cyclone of going down, even if you're smiling about it, that there's something that is going to lift you up and make the spiral go in the other direction.
Yeah.
And that's a key part of it. How do you help people believe that there might be something positive for you in this awful, that's the coincidence, where I call them false promise synchronicities, where
Mm,
whereas a false promise, it seems like it's going to work out, like with the psychiatrist, and it doesn't. And how do you then get people to believe that they should be looking. They should be looking, not just going like this, not just closing their eyes and and grimacing and
Yeah.
just hiding. But maybe you need to do that, but then begin to wake up and look around that maybe there is something very positive here for you. How do you get people to do that?
So we don't always know right away, and sometimes we might not ever know, but maybe if we can help people look back to a past negative event and see that maybe there was some positive out of it, or not that there was positive out of it, but maybe it taught us something we needed to know, a past event from 10, 20 years ago that doesn't have the emotional impact anymore. And maybe a little bit is just trust and faith that maybe there is something, even if I don't see it right now. And so it is hard to work with someone who's in the middle of it, to try to help them to flip that thinking switch a little bit, because a lot of people, when you're in it, you don't want to get out of it. So I don't know if I have like a magic technique or a magic question, but I think it's, looking retrospectively, has this happened before? Could there be something? And trying to look for, I guess, maybe looking for another positive coincidence so that they have trust and faith that something better could happen. I don't know.
Well, you do know, and I think the key words are trust and faith. You can
Yeah.
look back, and that'll help, but to trust that this is something potentially positive and have faith that it will be shown to you if you keep looking for it, and that's crucial.
Yeah. Yeah, that is, you're right. That's important.
Well, to me, you've gotten with the words trust and faith. I think you get to the fundamental of the false promise synchronicity. It's there's other elements to it. It's learning to have a vision of the future and then giving that up. I mean, letting go of what you think you really want,
Oh,
and
that's a
then
big one.
that,
Yeah.
and that's I'm glad you know that too. It's like, well, we've come to the end of our rock and roll session here today, and I can't help but mention that I lived at 6208 41st Avenue Northeast in Seattle, Washington. So
Oh,
so I love hearing a parking lot in Seattle story. Uh, it's it's
that's
just
right. You were at the University of Washington. I
uh,
remember
for
that now.
for 10 years. For 10
Oh,
years, I was at the University of Washington and just
okay.
rode my bike in the gray uh, to work.
Yeah,
And I just loved it. I just loved that gray, rainy stuff. My wife didn't. She's from Texas, but you
right.
you're not in Seattle anymore.
I'm north of Seattle. I'm in Snohomish.
Oh, you're way far
Yeah.
away. Oh, so far away.
Some people think so. Yeah, my Seattle friends think they need a passport to come visit me. So,
I think they're right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I certainly enjoyed riding the ferries.
Yeah.
I mean, that was and riding my bike around on various islands. It's gotten Californicated since I left.
Oh man. And it's been even worse the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, well, just immediately pre-COVID, and then now they're rebuilding again. So yeah, it's
and
crazy.
has I-5 been widened any?
Oh no, no,
I mean,
no,
going through, you got to knock down a few buildings to do that, and they're not going to
no.
do that. So that's but where you live, there's still some open space. I think. Um,
Yeah.
so it's nice to talk to almost. How long you been there?
I was born in Lake Forest Park, so I've been in Washington my entire life and pretty much the north end of Seattle my entire life. I had a job where I was traveling quite a bit at one point, and my goal was to find out where I wanted to move to because I couldn't stand the rain and the cold. And I actually had an experience one day with the mountains around here, and I knew this is just where I'm supposed to be. So I gave up the idea of moving. You know, I might be a snowbird. I might go to California or somewhere for winters. Actually, I go to Kenya for the winters, but yeah, so I've really come to appreciate this place a little more.
What was this experience with the mountains?
So I was actually driving. I was driving to a local job um down to Puyallup, driving on one of the side roads from Seattle south. Cascades on my left. And I had been listening to something, I don't know exactly what I'd been listening to, something that was promoting the ideas of, you know, there's something more for us here, that kind of thing. And all of a sudden, when I looked to my left at the mountains, it's like the sun shone on them and they spoke to me and said, "You made us." I don't know if I can remember exactly. It's like, "We are here for you. You know, you made us for you," or something to that effect. And it was like, oh yeah, because they are like my grounding, you know, source. And so you know, it's almost like I personally created them for me, which
Don't
I've
don't
never
don't,
said in public.
well, don't degrade that, because that's what you felt, and that's such a hint about how you're part of something much greater, and you have a role in it, and that's so important for you to be able to acknowledge. Um,
Yeah,
and it you have to be humble about it because you're mostly in your body, but uh,
right.
they didn't want you to leave. I had some wonderful walks up there in the Cascades.
Yeah.
It's it's and the Olympic Peninsula is just these are just these are just Salt Spring Island in British
Oh
Columbia.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
They're beautiful.
it's gotten overpopulated. Cortez Island, uh, but also the 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 Seattle, the ones closer to Seattle, ride bikes around there.
Right.
It's a beautiful part of the world if you can stand the rain, and you go to Kenya uh, in the winter when, I mean, you couldn't tell the difference between day and light, 9 a.m., 3 p.m., except a
Right.
slight increase in light.
Right. Exactly.
And I love that. I'm a Pisces, so it was like swimming around in a pond for me.
Nice. That's funny.
Well,
Yeah.
as I mentioned, we need to stop, but I love talking about Seattle. Is there anything else you'd like our listeners who may have come this far in listening to us that you'd like to be able to tell them?
Oh, well, I mean, I would just love to say, you know, continue exploring, and if I can mention, you know, something I'm doing right now, which is um meditation or journal prompts to connect with animals deeper. It's just something I'm doing on my social medias that to help people just experience this connection a little bit more. So,
Tell us a little bit more about your social media.
yeah, I am just about everywhere. I'm at Rev Karen Cleveland. So revkarencleveland.com. I'm on Facebook mostly. I do some TikTok and some YouTube, definitely my podcast and some other videos on YouTube, which is at Rev Karen Cleveland. Um, I'm not always the best poster every day, but I I enjoy, you know, content that helps, like I said, helps people ask questions or um, learn something about themselves or about something else. So,
Good.
yeah.
Well, I thank you very, very, very much for being on the show with me. You really are doing something very similar to what I'm trying to be able to do with the Coincidence Project. So
Yeah.
I very much appreciate meeting you and also connecting a little bit with the Seattle area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it as well. So we both continue our good work here.
Yes.
This psychosphere is our mental atmosphere, like a hologram of cosmic consciousness.